everyone. Welcome to my presentation. My name is Brianna Lamb, and in addition to being a hermit crab parent like many of you, I'm also a children's librarian. One of my favorite storytime books is the classic A House for Hermit Crab by Eric Carle. So that got me thinking, how many other hermit crab books are out there? Hence, this presentation was born. Hermits in the Library, A History of Hermit Crabs in Stories and Literature. This presentation will mostly cover accessible hermit crab stories from past and present, so no scientific papers here. It also has a focus on children's picture books, although some other books and poems are thrown in the mix too. And as you can see, Dumpling the hermit crab will be joining us today. Right now she's finishing up her beach read. She may pop up throughout the presentation, so try to count how many times you spot her. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Hermit crabs have been spoken and written about since ancient times, but how they are talked about and through what medium has changed. Let's go way back to see the first instances of hermit crabs being talked about. In Aristotle's 4th century BCE work, The History of Animals, he describes hermit crabs as growing spontaneously out of soil and slime and finding its way into untenanted shells. As it grows, it shifts to a larger shell. After entering a new shell, it carries it about and begins again to feed, and by, as it grows, it shifts again into another larger one. Pliny the Elder also briefly mentioned the hermit crab, lumping it in with its crustaceous cousins in his work Natural History from around CE 77 to 79. Hermit crab oral stories are abundant in island nations in the Pacific. There's an ancient oral story from the indigenous Okinawan population, saying that the heavenly god ordered Amanchu to create Yaeyama Island. Then from the earth came a hermit crab, the first creature. In the story, the crab is called Aman, meaning heavenly. The ancient world was seen as Amanyo, or the world of hermit crabs. In a continuation of the story, a hermit crab ate the fruit of the tree called Adan and was reborn as a human being. Many hermit crab myths are found in Indonesia and Micronesia. The people of Palau even developed an art of carving these myths and legends into the gables of their houses and onto beams. Let's fast forward just a bit to medieval times. It's time for ye olde crab myths. During this time, it was common for crabs in general, whether they were crayfish, hermit crabs, or a good old rock crab, to be linked to the solstices. Their walks made people think about the forward and backward shifting of day lengths. Medieval people also believed that people born under the sign of Cancer were immensely powerful. In drawings and illustrations, crustaceans got the same lumped-together treatment, although they were very important to zodiac charts. The humble crab was not so humble. Crustaceans were also very important and common in calendar pages of devotional books and other manuscripts, but usually as nothing more than decoration or a nudge to their zodiac origins. Princeton University alone holds 200 manuscript pages featuring crustaceans. Holy crab! In addition to these illustrations, in my research I came across this strange little anomaly. An illustrated hermit crab can be seen in the top left corner, but this isn't a manuscript of a devotional book like the others. This is a 16th century biography of one Thomas Wolsey, an English statesman and a Catholic cardinal. Did he have a secret affinity for the hermit crab, perhaps? Now let's fast forward a bit to the 19th century and get scientific. The 1800s were a time of massive progress in the discipline of biology, as well as subdisciplines like plant and animal physiology. This led to many books on the topic, accompanied by more detailed scientific illustrations. And that's about as deep into scientific exploration as we're going to get in this presentation. Take a look at these 19th century illustrations. You'll see the hermit crabs on top are in different poses, with and without a shell. This is when the science of the crab came to outshine the myths and legends attached to it. Time for the good stuff, the earliest books for entertainment featuring our friend the hermit crab. The first book I could find in my search is Annie E. Ridley's 1865 book, Under the Waves, or The Hermit Crab in Society. Ridley was British, but grew up in Australia, exploring nature, which she said caused her to have a unique perspective of the world around her. The dawn of the scientific era may also have nudged her to create the book. The story follows a hermit crab named Krusty, who goes out in search of adventure and new friends. While the book is whimsical in its plot, it does contain much actual information on marine hermit crabs and other sea-dwelling creatures, much like our next book, Pagoo, written by Halling Clancy Halling in 1957. Yes, it took almost a century for there to be another significant hermit crab book, but it's a good one. And one that many people claim as the first book that got them interested in hermit crabs. Halling was an American writer who mainly wrote children's books about nature. The story follows Pagoo as he makes his way through life in a tide pool. It's scientific in its delivery, but it's still accessible to children. Much like Ridley's book, it also describes a lot of different sea life and how they interact with hermit crabs. Not pictured here is a Palauan Legends book by Alfonso R. Otterong and Kathy Kisole from 1962. And next, we have William Stevens' 1969 book, Hermit Crab Lives in a Shell, to wrap up our set of earliest books. All of these, save for the Book of Legends, which falls under cultural heritage, focus on educating the reader about the lives of these creatures. Let's continue through the timeline and see if this pattern changes. The next generation of hermit crab books contains Eric Carle's classic A House for Hermit Crab, the one everybody knows. But the era of the 80s and 90s also produced some great and not so great hermit crab books. Amazingly, the hermit crab pet boom of the previous decades did not increase the number of books at the time, unless you count a few poorly made care guides. Nor did the burgeoning ocean and wildlife conservation movements. But the following decades made up for this. These books also tended to focus on crabs in the wild, but not always, as you can see from the book on the right. That crab needs a much better tank. Mary Stoltz's Night of Ghosts and Hermits was aimed at teaching older children the wonders of a beach at night. Does Anyone Know Where a Hermit Crab Goes, by Michael Glaser, latches on to a still-used theme in hermit crab books, the crab off to find a new shell. Is This a House for Hermit Crab, by Megan MacDonald, follows that same path and is actually still so popular that it just got re-released with a brand new cover for a brand new generation of kids. One book that deviates from the norm, especially during this era, is The Crab Man by Patricia E. Van West. This book centers on a boy who works catching crabs for the pet trade in order to make money for his family. But when he learns how they're mistreated, he has a big decision to make. This theme was way ahead of its time. In the realm of adult literature, Mary Oliver published a poem titled The Hermit Crab in her collection House of Light, and Michio Mado's poem The Hermit Crab was translated into English. There are also several examples of hermit crabs in international books, especially in China. Next came the book boom of the 2000s. In this decade, we start to see a branching off of themes. This first book, Hermit Crab Moves House, by Linda Hartley, is unique in that it uses actual photos of marine hermit crabs to entertain and educate the reader. The next book, Hermie the Hermit Crab and the Sea Turtle Rescue, a sequel to a previous Hermie book by Andrea Weathers, places our crabby protagonist as a hero in helping another at-risk species. This most likely links to the growing conservation movements in the 2000s, as well as the initiative to reconnect children with nature. Sharing a Shell remains a favorite at my library for its use of vibrant colors. It's very cute, but also shows how a hermit crab interacts with other sea creatures and how they form a mutual relationship. You may have noticed many of these books feature hermit crabs underwater, marine hermit crabs, but they don't explicitly say they're marine. They don't say there's a difference at all. That's why I like The Strange Life of the Land Hermit Crab by Wendy Pfeffer. Kids learn differences between the two, something that isn't made obvious in many other books. The art is also beautiful. Hermit crabs were also cool with taking a backseat during this era. Many books added hermit crabs as side characters, or simply illustrated them in backgrounds. While most of the books from this time are pretty educational for young children, teaching them about crab shells and such, they can sometimes fall flat if the book is overall pretty cartoony. But as it's not a pet care book, there's a little bit of leeway. I got the chance to correspond with Carter Goodrich, author of The Hermit Crab, and also illustrator for The New Yorker and movies like Coco, Brave, Hotel Transylvania, Finding Nemo, and Despicable Me. He told me as a child he spent his summers on a small island off the Cape in Massachusetts and was fascinated by the little crabs that wandered around the small stones and sand right at the edge of the water. He said, "I guess the extent of my research began and ended there. I thought it would be fun if a shy little hermit crab chose something that inadvertently presented a very different personality in the world. A kind of superhero crab. Sort of a you can't judge a book by its cover tale." Since then, he's learned more about how hermit crabs are using beach trash as homes. He says, "I recently saw a short video of a young guy who brings small shells to the beach for hermit crabs to use as proper homes. It was kind of heartbreaking to watch them climbing out of bottle caps and other plastic debris and climbing into a lovely shell that he would place next to them. I didn't know that beachcombing of shells is having a negative impact on these little guys, reducing them to finding homes in our plastic trash." He regrets not doing more research for the book, but ultimately was just enamored by the crabs and wanted to tell a small tale. I reassured him we do still love his book. The 2010s started a whole new era of crabby literature. This was the age of self-publications and indie publishers, and people took advantage of this to publish more hermit crab books than ever before. These ranged from educational, like The Shell Exchange by Rosie Tipping, to outrageous, like Crazy Crab by Mark C. Evans. Baby board books became popular as well as easy reader books. There were even books that were converted from comics. Looking at you, Daniel K. And there were some that still fit the theme of cute yet educational, like Herman the Hermit Crab and His Many Adventures by Cindy Hollingsworth. These books show a detailed, little less cartoony-looking crab and teach kids about hermit crabs while engaging them in a fun story. Okay, now for the scary part. Don't worry, you can close your eyes if it's too much, I won't judge. In my research, I found so many care books. Some of them are geared towards children claiming they're easy pets. Some are published by pet food and supply companies. Some claim to give expert advice while disregarding all research pointing to the opposite. I even found one that didn't seem to know there was a difference between marine and land hermit crabs. This trend seems to have picked up speed in the 90s, and now, just searching through one library bookseller's site, I found 11 different crab care books just from the past 10 years. Again, that's just from one site. Thankfully, a hero emerged when we needed her most. Let's all take a minute to thank Stacy Griffith for her hard work in compiling this much-needed important book. Detailed enough to cover just about every crab-related question or problem you have, and accessible enough for older children to learn from. This is the Crab Keeping Bible, so thank you, Stacy, for being the light at the end of the tunnel in this situation. And now for the modern crab. Books from 2020 to the present day. Self-publishing is still popular, and often these are the most educational of the books. More mainstream books like I'm Fabulous Crab by Nikki Greenberg may seem fantastical at first, but still teach children about the ocean and its creatures, much like Donaldson's Sharing a Shell. Sometimes two topics combine, like teaching about hermit crabs and their shells, as well as teaching children about emotions and sharing, like in The Selfish Crab by Anya Glazer. Even more international books, and translations are popping up, including Ocean Lessons for the Hermit Crab by Dong Ni Bao. Adults get more literature too. Life Between the Tides by Adam Nicholson is a tide pool lover's dream book. The second author spotlight belongs to Vanessa Pike Russell and her brand new book, Crabnapped, a land hermit crab story, co-written with Jeff Pike. She says she remembers reading A House for Hermit Crab, but also credits Pagoo with helping ignite the love for hermit crabs. Her book centers on Rocky and Krusty, two land hermit crabs in Australia who are kidnapped from a beach and sent to a pet store. The story talks about their survival and also the different types of hermit crabs they meet at the store. What's even better is that Vanessa has included in the story how to better take care of your hermit crabs, including mentions of the Crab Street Journal and Hermit House. Vanessa says, I wanted to write Crabnapped and highlight the plight of wild hermit crabs that are harvested from the wild. Most kids don't know much about land hermit crab care, and I hoped to inform, educate, and entertain for kids 9 and up. I talked with publishers, and they wanted me to remove a lot of information and make it more just a picture book, but I was adamant that I wanted it to be true to the original concept. I hope it helps children empathize with the hermit crabs and find a loving home for hermit crabs if they struggle meeting their needs. Vanessa also included a handy glossary in the back to help kids understand some of the bigger words like exoskeleton. She says it's been a 9-year journey of writing the book, and she was so lucky to find her illustrator who helped it come to life. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for persevering and bringing this great book into the world. And with Vanessa's book, we've come full circle, from Annie Ridley growing up in Australia and writing the first book in the presentation, with a protagonist named Krusty, to Vanessa's 2024 book set in Australia, also with a protagonist named Krusty. As we move through time, new storytelling devices come along. First oral stories, then stone tablets and scrolls, then books, and now we have movies, TV shows, and video games. Recently, the Paramount movie Under the Boardwalk came out in 2023. While the movie seems goofy, and it is, it also highlights the difference between land hermit crabs and marine hermit crabs, if only vaguely. It is something most picture books still don't do. Furthermore, it goes on to describe the horrible conditions of beach pet stores. Even video games are making crabs into protagonists. 3 video games have come out recently that are all centered on hermit crabs. A hermit crab is finding a house, has you play as a crab in a trash home, sliding shells around in order to find a better home. Hermit, an underwater tale, is tricky. I've tried. You play as a tiny crab who faces waves of dangerous sea creatures. You protect yourself by launching empty shells at foes. In Another Crab's Treasure, you play as Krill the hermit crab as he goes on a treasure hunt to win back his shell and learn the dark secrets of the polluted ocean. Any gamers out there looking forward to playing these? All of these are available to play on Steam. All in all, I compiled a list of 89 hermit crab books and poems spanning from 1865 to 2024, not including those care guides. Did I mention your favorite in the presentation? I'd like to give special thanks to Carter Goodrich and Vanessa Pike Russell for taking the time to answer my questions and for being just wonderful people. My local library system for helping me obtain so many of these books. LHCOS for all of your support and crabby love. And of course to all the authors, past, present, and future, who advocate for these amazing creatures we all love. So, did you count how many times dumpling appeared in the presentation? Not including this slide. The correct answer is 12. Aw, Dumpling's so proud of you. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I hope it was educational and entertaining. If you have any questions or you'd like the full list of books I compiled, feel free to email me at the address below. Also, don't be afraid to contact your local librarians about getting some great hermit crab books in the library. We're really nice people, I promise. Thanks again, everyone.